IP in the hair care industry. And we're excited to have these amazing innovators with us. And I'm going to turn it over to the moderator, Miss Angela Wilson, and she will introduce our panelists. Angela.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Great. I think it's very, very great that we just highlighted Ms. Joyner. And I think we can say that our panelists are definitely the fruit of her labor when it comes to innovation in the hair care industry. So I'll give a brief introduction to them, and then we'll get right into it. So Dr. Ty Caldwell is the creator of the first on-demand salon and barbershop space rental app. He is an award-winning author, tech visionary and pioneer, philanthropist, and entrepreneur whose aim is to help beauty professionals around the world build efficient, passion-filled businesses. Having worked in beauty for 25 years as a master barber stylist, educator, and small business coach, he now disrupts the B2B beauty and barbering industry by building the first of its kind mobile platform, ShearShare, that allows stylists to find and book empty salon space on demand. I'm gonna pull up something for Ms. Caldwell. Oh! Courtney Caldwell is the co-founder and COO of beauty tech startup ShearShare. Prior to co-founding ShearShare Inc., a 2022 Fast Company World Changing Ideas app, Courtney managed an award-winning salon with her husband and co-founder, which was the genesis behind ShearShare. Before that, Courtney ran a boutique consulting firm where she fast-tracked international sales and marketing success for brands such as Zendesk, Zenefits, and Qualtrics. I want to make sure I read this also. Courtney recently summited Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, Africa, in 7 days.
I was not alone. My husband was right there by my side.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much
Thanks for having us.
for sharing this space and providing information to all of these budding entrepreneurs and innovators. And I think most of us have been in a beauty salon or a barbershop, and you've seen an empty chair or an empty station. Why did you see empty chairs and empty stations and think that's a business opportunity?
Thank you guys for having us. One of the things that I always looked at as a salon owner and barbershop owner, that's real estate. They've always told us as business owners that this is a space that you have to find a way to make money on, whether it's selling products, whether it's putting somebody in that position to create income. And one of the things that I've been doing for the last 30 years owning an award-winning salon and barbershop is trying to not only create jobs, but also get the internal understanding of what it's going to take in actuality to be successful in the beauty and barbering industry. And it takes people, it takes know-how, it takes understanding, and it's just not being behind the chair. I think most people think of salon and barbershops as mom and pop shops. This industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So there's always ways to really look at how to understand the business from behind the chair. And that's something that I tried to do. So when we had expanded and rebranded our award-winning salon in Plano, Texas, we wanted to understand, after having a long list of people waiting, what is it going to take for us to now fill these empty spaces? Where in 2012, after expanding and rebranding, that list had gotten shortened. We now decided to put in suites. The suite rental came out around 2010, 2012, somewhere up in that time, and people wanted to be their own bosses. People say, you know what, I don't want to give 50, 60, 70% of my income to the salon owner. I'm actually want to be an independent contractor. Yes, once I get out of school, I'll work under commission, because there are 3 ways to work in our industry. You're either going to be a commission-based worker, employee-based worker, or independent contractor. I pretty much allow people to be hybrid. I never wanted to turn away a body. I never wanted to turn away a potential owner. I never wanted to turn away a potential successful artist. because once they come in and they work under you on the commission, they decide now I want to be my own boss. I'm going to leave. So then I created the suites to give people their own personal space. Now they can independently contract through me by the week, by the month, or long term. And that was the genesis, because after we realized that these spaces are going dormant for so long, we're like, what's happening? You know, the industry's changing. And I told my wife one day, a stylist that came to me and she said, Dr. Ty, you know, I see you have empty spaces. I looked at you on Google and I really want to work here, but the only caveat is I don't want to sign a long-term contract, nor do I want to be an employee. And I said, well, I never thought about it. I went home and told my wife and she laughed in my face, but she also laughed at Twitter, guys.
That's a true story.
So I was like, my grandmother, you know, my great grandmother, who always said 0 to 0 equals nothing. I said, I would rather make something. So I called the young lady up the next day and I said, come in, we had a meeting. I said, well, how would you like for me to help you? She's like, well, I have 20 to 25 clients that don't want to travel to the southern sector of Dallas to come here every week, every other week. And I just need to work here by the day. So I was like, okay, what can I do to kind of help me create income, but also get a premium charge instead of trying to make booth rental divided by 5. And I put a premium charge. I decided to give her free towel service. I decided to give her free back bar, which was shampoo and conditioner, and give her the range for the whole salon as if she was an employee. And it was such a great experience. The staff liked her. The culture, she fit right in with the culture. Her clients loved the ambiance, and that was the aha moment, because she started putting her stays on social media. Her friends were asking her, how are you staying at these different locations? And, you know, it all started from there. Courtney?
I don't believe that most people, you guys probably wouldn't know this, but that 40% of salon and barbershop space goes unused every single day. Right. And I say that because as Dr. Graham was speaking in the prior panel, he was talking about making sure that when you're thinking about ideas or you have this great concept, that it's a real problem that you're trying to solve. Like, none of us wants to create like another mousetrap, right? But real quick on my husband, because he's very unassuming, although he is the most unemployable person that I know in my entire life. He's like, look at the definition of entrepreneur in the dictionary and it's this man's face. But he's been in the beauty and barbering industry for 30 years, right? Celebrity barber, celebrity hairstylist, although he would never call himself that. That was his clientele when he was behind the chair. Been running an award-winning salon and barbershop for 27 years, and is actually the first African-American male member-elect to the Professional Beauty Association. And PBA, thank you. Yes, I'm so proud of him. Yeah. PBA is responsible for our lobbyists and legislature, so super important role, right? Not only that, but he's a #1 best-selling author on how to achieve long-term success in this industry. And what else? You do so much stuff. And he mentors the up-and-coming generation, this rising generation of stylists and salon owners. So I say all that to say that obviously he loves this industry today more now than he did 30 years ago. And so when we had this problem in our own salon, it was just a natural for us. We're like, okay, well, this is our own problem to solve. What can we do to help small business owners be able to monetize their excess capacity? So if you have an empty chair or an open suite in your salon or barbershop, you can list it for free on the ShareShare app. Again, my husband's idea, and you can lease it out by the day. That's never happened in our industry before. And we actually have to applaud Madam C.J. Walker, because she was the one who invented commission-based salons and independent contracting when you think about beauty and barbering. And so honestly, we're just standing on her shoulders and decided to put a tech layer over it. But today, ShareShare has listings across 900 cities, right? Because hair, skin, and nails is everywhere. People actually refer to us as Hairbnb, and that's exactly what we do every day. But I'm so happy that he had this idea and came to me when I was working at Oracle and said 8 words that changed our life. He said, I think this needs to be an app. And I was like, all right. So we grabbed hands, we jumped, and we've been growing our wings on the way down ever since.
Who needs a bullhorn when you have someone like this?
Well, I mentioned in the introduction that you climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, and I'm sure that was extremely challenging. Can you speak to some of the challenges you encountered as an entrepreneur?
There's so many challenges. I think that the ignorance of not knowing what you don't know sometimes is good. I think that if you told people the struggles that you would have to go through, most of us would never go through them.
Thank you.
Um, just to kind of give you an example, it took 7 days to climb Kilimanjaro. We live in Buffalo now, by the way, at 43 North. We're going through an incubator accelerator. We're one of the 2021 winners of $5 million, 8 companies. And with that winnings, you have to move to Buffalo, New York for a year. And so I met a gentleman last July, and we were talking about, some stuff I wanted to do for the community there and banking needs. And we just started talking personally, and he was telling me that we were both adventurous. He was telling me that he was taking his fiance to Tanzania to climb Kilimanjaro. I said, wow. I was just messing with him. I said, can I go? He said, you want to go? I said, well, can I go? So I said, well, let me talk to my wife about it, and went home, and I said, well, we have an opportunity to climb Kilimanjaro. Do you want to go? She's like, yes. I was like, well, it's not a sure thing yet. I'm going to get an email later saying yes or no if we can or not. Got the email saying that we could go. But long story short, it was a 7-day trip. Most people take a year to train for this. We didn't get in till July. The trip was in November, and we had 3 months to train. So sometimes when you're becoming an entrepreneur, it's not just by happenstance. There's got to be something you want to do. And it has to be some internal willingness, internal things that you really have to focus on to really get to certain levels, certain stages to become successful. Because you're going to make stumbles along the way. You're going to have failures along the way. But failure doesn't mean quit. Failure means pivot. In the tech world, pivot is a big thing. Failure is necessary. So it took 7 days to climb Kilimanjaro. You have so many things to think about on your way there. But we were standing on the back of our ancestors. We felt like we was in the motherland. And not one time that we did not think we were going to make it. But I can tell you that was the hardest thing we've ever done. Now, that was the hardest thing. Being a startup founder was the first thing up until then. But I think that, but I think that if I had to say what are those harder things, it's just the infrastructure of what you need to do to build. We're going to talk about some things here today, and I'm sure we are, because it takes mentors, it takes resources, and resources could be people, resources could be capital, resources could be education, and resources could just be the banking needs. Are you doing the right things? Are you making the right decisions? Are you making the right steps? But you want to make sure that if you're going to be going the trek, whether it's Kilimanjaro, whether it's being a startup founder, whether it's being an entrepreneur, that you're taking the necessary steps to follow the direction that you really want to go.
I think about 2 things when I think about starting a startup and starting a small business and summiting Mount Kilimanjaro, which is the largest freestanding mountain in the world. Once you hit summit, you're at 19,341 feet above sea level, right? 35,000 people try to summit Mount Kilimanjaro every single year, and only 40% of people actually make it up to the top. So that's telling you a lot. But there's a word in Swahili where our tour guides would always tell us. They said, pole, pole. And what that means is slow, slow. Like you have to walk so slow going up this mountain because of the acclimatization. Like by the time you get to the top at 19,341 feet above sea level, you only have access to 50% of your lung capacity. So it's a really, really big deal. I mean, we had 2 med checks every day. It was serious. But I think that's one thing that you have taught me, being the entrepreneur in the family. And I've been, working in corporate America before he pulled me into this thing called SheerShare, is that slow growth is actually good growth. A lot of people will say, you need to grow at all costs and spend as much money as possible to get as many new users. And unfortunately, in times like today, when I think about today's economic climate, like people are saying, oh my gosh, that was probably the worst advice. Like people want to make sure that they're profitable, that they're making intelligent business decisions, and that they have longevity. I mean, really the end to this game is just don't die, and eventually you'll turn the corner. That's thing one. The second thing is that 7 days, climbing up a mountain, being outside. I think it's very important when you think about startups and the challenges you have is to make sure that you're surrounded with a really good, positive group of people. My husband always says that optimism is a competitive advantage, and it truly is. And I remember as I was climbing and he was right behind me, he would constantly say, Courtney, you're doing a great job. You're doing so amazing. Oh my gosh. Like if you could see yourself, just messing with me, but it made me smile and not think about the pain and torture that I may have been in that moment. And I think the same thing, that's how we get through Share. Like every day running a startup, you're going to have a roller coaster. 9 o'clock may have like an amazing summit, and then you may hit the wall at like 10:30 that same morning. And so having a person or a tribe of people, a support system who will pick you back up again and just say, keep going and pat you on the back is so very important. You need that.
Well, speaking of that tribe of people, can you speak a little bit about mentorship and relationship building in your entrepreneur journey?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that, I can share, we talked about my best-selling book. It's called Mentored by Failure. I didn't have the mentors that most people were looking for to be successful. There was no one that at that time that I could look at on social media. There was no social media. There was no one that I could pick up a phone and call. I had a very stealth and robust clientele, but I had to be specific in who I was trying to connect with, someone who has been on a journey that I want to go on. So I was making a lot of failures as I was building clientele, trying to be successful as a business owner. But one of the things that I learned about, and I said it earlier, is failure became a mentor for me because I never wanted to quit. So today, as I think about all the people that are coming behind me, I do have a lot of mentors. I'm one of Les Brown's platinum speakers. I actually spent a lot of money to spend time with him to get the training that I needed. Mike Singletary, Hall of Fame linebacker for the Chicago Bears. That's one person I speak to. I have 2 spiritual fathers, a spiritual mother. I have a lot of people that I connect to that can help me along the way. And I think sometimes it's all about having the right mental health, having the right people that can support you, having that undergirding and that foundation of people you can fall back on. And then it keeps that mental health happening, and it keeps you ingrained in the right circles. And also therapy helps a lot. I know my wife, she talks about therapy a lot. I have these great people around me. So we always try to make sure that we use our resources. Those resources could be family. I know my mom, my mom who's passed 3 years ago, she was my biggest advocate. She always was there supporting me, my wife, of course, and then my brother who actually runs our award-winning salon in Dallas. So having those people supporting us, having those mentors, but having somebody to reach back and say, hey, you know what? Continue to move forward. You're doing the right things. You're saying you're keeping yourself in a position to succeed, because at the end of the day, you're either getting ready to go through a storm, you're either in the storm, or you're coming out.
Amen. Look, I know we probably look like your average software engineers, right? But we're not. And so I say that to say that we are not your typical startup founder. Like I know when I was in school, when I thought about Silicon Valley and tech startups, I thought about your Mark Zuckerbergs, right? And so, for us being married co-founders, which a lot of investors didn't really appreciate, being African-American, which is already difficult in itself when you step outside of your home, not being on either one of the coasts, so we didn't build our business in Silicon Valley or in New York, being in the middle of America when we first started Share in Dallas, Texas. There were a lot of things that could have said, maybe you should not do this. But because we had this own problem that we were solving for ourselves, that made us say, okay, well, if we don't know the answer, let's just ask people who are a lot smarter than we are. I went to LinkedIn, and this was when I was flying back and forth from Dallas to Mountain View when I was working at Oracle every single month. And this lady reached out to me on LinkedIn, and you know how you always say, oh, we should have lunch or we should grab coffee, and you really don't ever do that. This time I actually did. And so we were sitting there, and I was telling her about what I was doing at Oracle at the time, and she was talking to me about this thing called startups, and I was like, what? And I figured, okay, that was a nice 30 minutes of my time, but our worlds will never cross. When we had this idea and we were manually matching stylists to empty salon space for 3 years before we looked up and said, I think this needs to be an app, my husband said, call that lady who used that word, who said the word startup. And I was like, oh, okay. We called her, and she ended up being our first advisor to the company, and she's still around to this day. She's been a part of Share's story ever since day one.
Wow.
Yeah.
That
So
is-
thank goodness for LinkedIn coffees.
Can you talk to us about how you raise capital for your business? And
Hard. I'll say this before my husband continues. I'm on what I consider to be the best and the worst list, which is the number of African American women who have raised more than $1 million in VC funding. I'm number 33 on that list, and I should not know what number I am. For every 1.2 million that our non-melanated peers receive in VC funding, a Black female gets $1,200. Which is crazy. Like, what can you do with 12? I can do a lot with $1 million, but I don't know what you can do with 1,200, although we did make it work. And we bootstrapped SheerShare from the very beginning. And honestly, it wasn't because we were not able to fundraise. We bootstrapped SheerShare because we didn't even know that world existed. Like, there's a place where people will write you checks to go build your dream. Like, did not know. And I was flying from Dallas into Silicon Valley, the heart of the valley, every single month. And still, that world was so foreign to me. But so we drained our savings account, drained our checking account. We said, okay, if we're serious about this, we need to pay off the cars. We need to pay off our house. We need to make sure that we have no bills in our name, because it'll be so easy for us to say, forget it, go back and get a regular 9-to-5. And then our son was in middle school at the time when we were thinking about this. And now he's a senior cadet and football player at the U.S. Air Force Academy, starting safety, by the way, All-American. I have to put that little plug in. Thank you very much. And so life was very, very, very full. But then Ty said, I think we need to drain the 401k. And I still clutch my pearls when I think about that. I'm like, that was so difficult to do. But following this man and seeing him and how hard he worked as an entrepreneur, I knew that if we hit zero, we were just going to bounce right back up again, because I've seen him model that for our family. And so thankfully, we were able to start fundraising. We did pitch competitions, did not know what a pitch competition was, but the very first one we were in, we won money. And that was non-dilutive capital, which means that you receive funds for your winning pitch and you don't have to give away any equity in your company. And then we started to be introduced to accelerator programs and incubator programs like your Y Combinators, like Airbnb came out of YC, your 500 startups. So Credit Karma came out of 500 startups. Your 43 Norths, ACV Auctions, which just hit IPO a couple of years ago, came out of 43 North. And so we started going to those accelerator programs and getting great advice, because these organizations had inroads into the investors. They would tell you, this is what your pitch deck needs to look like. This is what you need to prepare for. This is how you walk into a meeting. And so all of that information was very, very new to us, although we had 20 plus 25 years of just small business experience. And then we were comfortable enough to start raising money. And I'm so happy to say that, we have some amazing, amazing investors, like Mark Cuban is an investor, Steve Case, founder of AOL, Kim Kimball, who's Beyonce's hairstylist, is an advisor for SheerShare. I mean, the list goes on, right? And so all because we had this problem that we were solving for ourselves and believed in ourselves enough to say, if I'm going to bet on anybody, I'm going to bet on us. And so here we are today.
That was only 3 times. Go ahead. That was only 3 times that we emptied our account. I actually emptied my account 6 times to zero and started over. I always took the opportunity to say, you know what, if I am going to bet on anybody, I'm going to bet on myself. So if there are any youngsters out there, anyone in here who wants to start a second career, post-retirement, someone that says, you know what, I'm not sure if I want to do it. I always look at these numbers. 97% of people will never change. 2% will think about it, and only 1% will. And a lot of times it's that 2%, it's that crossover. Can I do it? Will I do it? What friend or family may say, what are you doing? Why would you empty your account? Or why would you decide to leave college or quit this nice job to do something that you don't know will be successful? Bet on yourself, because at the end of the day, if you don't, who else will? And all the things that my wife talked about, we had to go through those things, and it was hard. I had never had to go to an investor and ask for money. I always depended on my credit score. I always depended on having a little money. I always wanted to make sure that even if I went to the bank, they weren't going to turn me down because my credit score was high enough. I had enough money in the bank, and I could say, hey, and just the relationships as a whole. So I think at the end of the day, resources to capital is a must. From 2020, I think it was 2 point some billion, and we only got 1% of that. And so we know how hard it is for African Americans and people of color to get access to capital. But if you're going to do it, bet on yourself. and prove to people that you have the intelligence and the know-how and the willpower to do it.
I'll make everybody laugh. You do not have to start out, because people always ask us, like, you guys are the founders of a tech company, but you're not software engineers and you're not in tech. And no, I do not spend my weekends trying to learn how to code. Don't want to do that. I believe firmly in staffing your weaknesses. He is obviously subject matter expert, and I run the marketing and operations. But we were sitting at Chipotle one night and we were eating lots of rice and beans at this point. So we're trying to figure out, are we really going to create this app? Are we going to really like go for it? And my husband pulls out a napkin and he says, okay, if we're serious about this, like, what does this app even need to look like? And thankfully, we had those 3 years of directional data where we were manually calling salons and saying, hey, I have a stylist who has $50 to $65. She needs wheelchair accessibility for her 2 clients, and she'll be there next weekend. Do you have open space for her? Would you even say yes to this? Because we're bringing you brand new revenue. And so all of those questions that they would then ask us, we were able to write down. And so it became obvious to us what the app needed to look like. And so my husband drew out on a Chipotle napkin every screen of the ShareShare app, and that became our MVP. And so when the LinkedIn coffee and lunch lady said, okay, I get it. I know you guys don't have inroads to a CTO that you could hire. I know a third-party engineering team who may be able to help. We sat down with that team out in California and pushed the napkin across the table and said, I need you to build that. And that's how we got started. We now have our own engineering team, but start small.
Well, I hope you kept the napkin.
We do. The napkin is sitting right next to our patent. So yes.
A great segue. Let's talk about intellectual property. When did you know you needed to delve into preserving your intellectual property, and how did you go about the process?
They say that imitation is the highest form of flattery, right? Built our platform, get a competitor that wanted to skip the process. So they decided to copy and paste our platform and just add a different color. And we were like, oh, we hit up our attorneys and sent out a cease and desist. And Courtney had a friend who was a new attorneys, and we just went to her and said, you know what, we need a patent attorney. And this attorney was the foray into us getting our trademark and our design patent, because we knew then that competitors was going to come. And people had already named us Airbnb, so we bought all the URLs and everything that we could buy to keep our name protected. But it was Courtney's friend that really actually was the foray into us getting that patent.
And you know, I think about my ancestors, especially during Black History Month, but every day. And one of them is Garrett Augustus Morgan, who invented the mechanical stoplight. And he filed a patent in 1923. He then sold that to General Electric for like $40,000. I wish that was had a few zeros behind that. That's okay. But that was a learning, right? Because like we could take what we have built and go sell it to somebody for, you know, pittance, and they can go out and make tons of money. Like today, we're managing over what 150 million in barbershop and salon space assets, and pioneering something that's never been done before. And so we want to make sure that we have a piece of ownership in that. And thinking about like all the U.S. patent holders in the United States, only 1.6% are actually African American, and you're looking at 2 of them. So,
Wow.
Thank you.
Is there anything you know now about your journey that you wish you knew at the start of it?
Wow. Tyrone Davis had this saying called "There It Is," and I think I wish I would have counted the cost, not just in capital, but in time. There's so much sacrifice, commitment, and focus that it takes to really be on the trek of entrepreneurship, being a founder. And my spiritual father told me, he said, Ty, he said, when you're going to the penthouse, you're going to start at the bottom. It's going to be a lot of people getting on that elevator. But on the way to the penthouse, it's going to be a lot of people getting off. And it's not going to be many people going to the top. And you start to realize it's lonely. I'm the 7th of 8 kids, born in Arkansas, a small town, and had big dreams. Grandmother was just half a generation away from slavery. Great-grandmother was. Grandmother picked cotton, mother picked cotton. I chopped cotton from the age of 9 to 12. hard work
In the 80s.
in the 80s. Hard work isn't hard for me. But when I think about historically what I've had to go through and the success that I've made it from, anytime I get to moments of despair, I always think about the historical successes that got me to where I'm at. And that's what keeps me going. And when I think about just the question in itself that you asked, life is hard, but optimism is a must.
That's
That's
good.
good.
Ask me that. Ooh, I can't even think about how to follow that up. I think I wish that I knew then that I didn't have to be anybody different, that I could just be myself. And, you know, I think about all the little disciplines that it takes to do anything, to, you know, be yourself, to be a great spouse, to be a mother, to be a wonderful coworker, to start something from nothing. And it really is those little bitty things that nobody sees every day. It's getting up and making sure you're mentally healthy. It is, for us, it's praying and it's meditating. It's moving our body during the day. It's eating well. It's making sure we're getting enough sleep, that we're enjoying the journey. Because my husband always says, enjoy these days because we're living in the good old days right now. And I'm like, golly, like he is a pastor. I mean, I just know I married a pastor. And so I think about that. And even when I think about like how we came into ShareShare, like we're just doing what we've always done. You know, our marriage has been a wonderful merger. Our son, who is now off at the Air Force Academy, will be a pilot here in the next, 12 months. He's been acquired, so he's good to go. And then we have ShareShare, which is our next startup. And so we've been doing these things all along, building something from nothing, nurturing something, and then seeing it live out in the real world, where I wish I knew then that I didn't have to change anything about myself. And one of our investors, Arlen Hamilton, you may have seen her on the cover of like Inc. magazine and Entrepreneur magazine. She's amazing. Also a Dallasite who now lives in California, though. She told me something that I'll never forget. She said, as startup founders, it's going to be difficult. It's going to double down and be more difficult because you guys are married co-founders with no tech experience and you're African American, all these things. But just remember this, you have to be uniquely you so that the people who are looking for you can find you. I'm going to say that again. Arlen Hamilton says, you have to be uniquely you so that the people who are looking for you can find you.
Ooh.
I have to say this before your next question. Ms. Portia Deans reached out to me on LinkedIn. And, I was supposed to be virtual. I chose to be here. But a little known fact is that we were part of Black Founders Day at the New York Stock Exchange to ring the closing bell. So that's where we're at yesterday. That's where we're coming from. And it was all Black founders, investors, and it was a great experience. And I told Courtney, because she gave you something that I say to her all the time, we're living in the good old days. I said, I can imagine now when we were in the New York Stock Exchange with all these amazing people. Justin Tuck was there from New York Giants. He was moderating, all these magnificent people that you probably see in magazines. I said, now I can honestly say we're living Black history, and I can honestly say these were moments where you had your Lena Hornes, your Martin Luther Kings, your Malcolm X's. One of my really, really great, and I'm honored to used to have him as a client before he passed, was Marcus Haynes, one of the most amazing Harlem Globetrotters to ever live. And he and I used to speak, and I spoke at his funeral. But one of the things he always told me, he said, when you have an opportunity to speak or get interviewed, share with people truth, share with people journey, be a journeyman, show integrity and respect. And that's what we wanted to be here for, because we wanted people sometimes need to visibly see you and touch you. Some people could make it. We chose to be here.
And we thank you for that. As we close, and you guys have given us great little bits of wisdom. I see you have books. Can you tell the audience about your books?
So, we talked about, we had this, what would you call it? Climbing Kilimanjaro.
It was a spiritual moment. Like I just know that the ancestors jumped on our backs at the top of that summit, and they have been with us ever since. There was so much peace. Like I wish everybody in this room could feel what we felt at the very top of that mountain. It was so very like ethereal. And so coming down from that, we said we have to do something. Like there has to be something tangible that we can give to people and show people so they could feel just a little bit about what we felt. And so
So we always say optimism is a muscle, and people always ask us, and they think it's funny that we're always this way. We were just in a restaurant last night, and the lady saw us talking to each other as we were waiting on our next guest, and we're canoodling, having fun, kissing each other, and the ladies were like, y'all have a good night. She's like, did y'all just get married? I was like,
really,
no,
that's
ma'am.
so cute.
I was like, no, man, how long y'all been together? I said, well, our son is 22 years old. She was like, no. She was like, no. I was like, yes, ma'am, we are. We have a son, 22. And so we had a conversation with them, but we told them that how long we had been plant-based, because this was a vegan restaurant. And we've been plant-based for 12 plus years. And we told them that we had climbed Kilimanjaro, and we left them with saying optimism is a muscle. And we came up with the journal, the happiness journal. And this is something that we decided to make as soon as the year turned around. And it's just simple stuff. All the pages are the same, but it says happiness starts with daily discipline. We said, what are your affirmations for the day? What are your top 3 priorities? 3 things that which you're grateful for. What you fed your body that day. Your self-care activities. Some people don't even realize it, but they may not sleep 7-8 hours. Some people may not get sunlight and fresh air. Some people might not read a new book. Some people might not even think about, a staycation. They're always thinking about leaving. And then our last one is the notes and reflections. This is how we live our life. And I think sometimes when you have something to look forward to, you can always kind of give yourself an opportunity to win. So Mentor by Failure is something that I wrote, and it's now a L'Oreal CE course in some of the shows. And a lot of people like to teach this to their schools, because one of the things that I thought about when I wrote this book was, a 5-point guide to long-term success. But if you look at this book, it says plan A, and I crossed out plan A and put plan B, but there's never a plan B. If you have to have a plan B, you're going to fail. Okay. But my plan B was plan B, spelled B-E. So what does that plan B mean? So I didn't have nobody to teach me these things. So I'm just going to share this with you guys. It's kind of the chapters that I built and what I wanted people to really focus on to really be successful. So the first chapter talks about being focused, be focused. The second chapter is be professional. The third chapter is be your best brand, because people don't understand, as a licensed professional, you are your brand. It's not the name of your shop. You are your brand. And your clientele is a direct reflection of you. Chapter 4 is be smart about money. And then chapter 5 is be consistent. If you can do all those 5 things consistently, you have no reason to fall back and not be successful.
And so both of these books are available on Amazon. We do have 3 here with us today.
Let's give this
Great.
amazing
Thank you
panel
so
a
much.
big round of applause. Thank you, Angela, Courtney, and Ty. And Courtney and Ty, thank you for all the nuggets that you left with this audience.